everyone, my name is Chrissy and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a book review and a reviewing romance segment on The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. We're going to start with the book review and let me go into a brief summary. The book is a hate to love romance novel which features the main character, Lucy. Lucy is a very happy-go-lucky gal who works at B&G Publishing. She is a assistant to one of the co-CEOs of that publishing company. Lucy is very fashionable. This book is told from her point of view, by the way, and she's very much a people pleaser. She does not like to say no to people. She wants people to like her and to be amenable to those around her. Often this is to a little bit her detriment because people who are in her workspace who do not really think about her wishes and wants tend to step all over her. For example, there's one gal in particular that she works with who is constantly late on her deadlines, and Lucy's tired of it, but she hasn't really found the gumption to say anything to this person. Instead, she just says, "It's not a big deal. I'll just work late this day." And this is a little bit of a point of contention and kind of shows how much of a doormat Lucy is, just a little bit. There is one person that Lucy does stand up to, and this happens to be the assistant to the other co-CEO, and that happens to be Josh. Josh is a little bit of Lucy's polar opposite. He's a very organized person. He doesn't really care about people's opinions of him that are at his workplace. Instead, if you're late on a deadline, you're late on a deadline, and that's your fault, and you're going to have to pay for that in some way, shape, or form. This makes Josh not a very popular person, and it kind of goes a little bit against what Lucy stands for as far as wanting people to like her. She finds this infuriating as well as admirable. She does admire that he's able to get things done and that he is able to be a very competent person at his job, but at the same time she's a little bit like, why are you just not nice? And even though he treats everyone the same, it's a little bit of a hurt feelings for her that he isn't nice to her, that they work so close together and yet they have such contention. So at the start of this book, you have these two characters who don't like one another very much, or at least they seem not to like one another very much, and they have a lot of contention. Now throw in that the two CEOs decide we need a chief operations officer position to happen. So in order to make sure that the company does well and to cover these certain job tasks. The two most qualified are Lucy and Josh. Now, they did open it up to outside people, but we don't really get to hear much about that part of the interview process or the applications. It's mainly just focused on Lucy and Josh applying for this chief operations officer position. And so that's your plot, is those two kind of going at it over this position and, you know, working through kinks in the relationship and their relationship forming into something different throughout the book. I loved this book. It hit all the right tropes and story bits that I love the most in regards to hate to love stories. For one, it's a hate to love story. That's something that I just like. Don't know why, but I do. For two, it has jealousy as a little bit of a plot point in here. I don't even know if a plot point is a good way to phrase it, but for some reason, I like it when characters get jealous in romance novels, as long as it's not too extreme, as long as it's not like, you need to never talk to another man ever again. No, I don't like that kind of jealousy, just, you know, the concept and the feeling that another character has towards, you know, seeing their love interest go with someone else and they're just like burning up inside. In fiction, I think that's fantastic. I actually don't like jealousy in any means in real life, by the way. The people I dated or what have you, if they showed jealous tendencies, I tended to be turned off by that, and wasn't very interested in that person for having jealous features. I don't know why it's different from fiction to real life, but there you have it. Also, there's just something about two characters who are in contention, all of a sudden going soft for one another, that just warms my heart up. And there's also a lot of really funny scenes. There's a whole paintball scene, which I thought was just hilarious, especially how Lucy, as a main character, describes it. The things that at time normally turn me off about romance novels, much like this one, didn't bother me so much in this novel. Like first person storytelling, I'm actually not the biggest fan of first person point of view, but I thought it made a lot of sense for this book. I don't really see how it could have worked with the tension building up between Lucy and Josh without it being one of their points of views, mainly Lucy's, because without that kind of narrow perspective, you would have garnered a lot more insight earlier on into the book. So if I did have any particular issues with this book, one is that I wish that some of the action descriptions were a little bit more clear. I feel like most of the narrative was towards Lucy's feelings rather than towards what was actually going on around her. And I get that because it's first person that we are going to get more of that, here's what I thought, here's what I felt at that time, instead of here's what so-and-so is doing, here's what I was doing, here's what this other person was doing. So I just wish that there's a little bit more clarity in the action. And then for 2, I do wish it had ended on a slightly different note. There was an event that I was hoping would happen and that we'd get to see, and it alludes to it in the last chapter through the dialogue between Lucy and Josh, but it doesn't come to fruition in an actual scene, and I was a little bit disappointed. But it was still a good ending. It was a good place to leave off. I just wish there was more of it. And now to talk about reviewing romance. If you haven't watched this series on my channel before, what I do is I take a look at the relationship between the 2 main characters of a romance novel. And I took a look at 5 different categories. The categories are chemistry, kindness and respect, compatibility, communication, and trust. I lumped in kindness and respect with one another, mainly because I think that they oftentimes go hand in hand. I will say that I do go into a lot more detail in reviewing romance, and so that means I do talk about spoilers. If you don't want to read any spoilers or don't want to... Anyway, if you don't want to hear all of that, then by all means stop the video now. Thank you so much for watching. Good to see ya. But if you're down for this journey, let's get on with it. The first category is chemistry. I gave chemistry a whole heart. In the very essence of people not liking one another to a very extreme degree, oftentimes you get that chemistry that something's going on there. So whether or not it is that they just don't like each other or whether or not it is that they like each other a lot, there's something there that you can kind of feel in the air. And that's very much the case with Lucy and Josh. You felt like these two are drawn together for some reason, whether that's to hate each other's guts or to like each other. They're drawn to one another. There's also a lot of sexual tension in this book. A lot. The second category, kindness and respect, I gave half a heart. Now, you may be thinking, Christina, if you like this relationship so much, then why is it only half a heart for kindness and respect? Mainly this is due to the beginning of the book more than towards the end of the book. In fact, by the end of the book, they have a lot of growth with one another. And they have a lot more compassion and respect for one another, or at least that's shown by the end of the book. At the beginning of the book, Josh comes off as very insulting, and he calls Lucy pathetic at one point in time. Lucy takes this to heart, and she's not the kindest to Josh either. As time progresses, they open up to one another. Other things that I'll talk about, like trust and communication, start to open up. And suddenly the intentions that they had and the motivations that they have come into light, and now they're able to show that kindness and respect in a better and more fulfilling way. Also, they do care about each other and want each other to do well, even when they don't like each other very much. For example, there's a time when they do a team building exercise using paintballs. When it seems like Josh is going to be shot by another coworker, Lucy dodges in the way of that, and she's like, no! And ends up just getting pelted with all these paintballs and getting bruised to all get out. And Josh then tries to minimize that damage by taking some paintball shots for her. And so I think this is the beginning of that kind of kindness venture with one another where they're doing small things. There was also another part I really loved where Lucy gets sick and Josh comes to take care of her and make sure that she's doing okay. So I think that they fully change over by the end of this book. The third category, compatibility, I gave half a heart. And compatibility, I would say, I'd give half a heart throughout the whole book. And mainly because with these two characters, they are so opposite of each other. I do wonder how it's going to work between them in a full relationship. With that in mind, I think that there can be moments of opposites attract and opposites can get along and do things for each other that, someone who is more the same as you might not think of or what have you. For example, Lucy is a little bit more messy in her living space, whereas Josh is a very organized person. I think that they can balance each other out as long as they establish those boundaries with one another and as long as they were willing to, think about how they were going to manage being together in that kind of scenario. But if they don't manage to get those boundaries, then that can go in a very opposite direction too. For the fourth category, communication, I did put a full heart. Now, that full heart is not for the beginning of this book, and I feel like I should have done that for kindness and respect too, but for communication, it was so important for me about the growth at the end that I'm focusing on the end of this book, like past the second half of this book, rather than the first. Already in the beginning of the story, they don't have great communication skills. They're not telling each other how they really feel. But by the end, they have such tremendous progress towards telling each other how they feel and what things are like for them and their point of view. For example, Lucy is the date for Josh at his brother's wedding. Josh really doesn't want to go, and he doesn't really tell Lucy why in any concrete detail, so she has to put together the pieces herself. For example, she finds out that Josh's dad really looks down on Josh's job, that he feels Josh should have been going to school as a doctor, and that he should be in that career choice. And then later on, she hears that the gal who's going to be Josh's sister-in-law is also his ex. Lucy, in her mind, goes into thinking the only reason why Josh wanted her at this wedding is because he wants to make his ex jealous. That's really the only reason why he has her there. This has Lucy feeling really bad about herself, and is very hurt in her feelings. It could have easily led into another chapter of just wholehearted, they don't understand one another, and they're now apart and feeling weepy about each other. But it turns into Josh saying, we need to figure this out, and we need to clear out the open air about the problems that we have right now. And they actually talk about Josh's ex and how he doesn't feel anything for his ex anymore, and that he didn't just bring her here to this party to show off to her, that it's for other reasons that he brought her and that he does have feelings for her. And it's just such a good example of a character not letting it get into a point of miscommunication, that they manage to obliterate that misunderstanding, and instead now they're on the same page, they know what each other wants. It was a nice moment. So full heart for both of them figuring their stuff out. Now the last category is trust, and I gave this half a heart, and the reason why is because where this book ends, we don't see a lot about how their relationship is going to progress. We don't know where they're going to be in 6 months with one another. We can make guesses that they're going to be just fine and that they'll have a great life together for the rest of their days. However, during the bulk of this book, Lucy doesn't really trust Josh with her feelings, with her emotions, with herself, really. She knows that he's capable and that he's intelligent, and she trusts him with work stuff. But when it comes to the relationship aspect, especially towards the beginning and even about halfway through, she doesn't really trust what he's going to do or say or his intentions. Where it ends, they're starting to build that trust together, or at least Lucy's starting to build trust in Josh that he's not going to have these malicious thoughts, ideas, or, motivations towards her, but rather that he's going to take care of her in an emotional and mental way. So it's not even so much that you don't see how they can trust each other, and I do believe that they will. I wish we had an epilogue of what their life is like 6 months from when they start the relationship, or even a month after they start the relationship, and how they handle a conflict or a misunderstanding that's minor between those two. Because I think that will really show how much they've grown and what their now ideas and everything else are. So the total is 3.5 hearts. And that seems like it's not a very good score, especially for a romance novel I actually really, really like. But as said, this shows when they're getting together and ends at them getting fully together officially, and not weeks into the relationship or months or what have you. I said I really do hope Sally Thorne publishes a short story or something that just shows what their relationship looks like in the future, because I would really be interested in how they're getting along from there on out. So that's my book review and reviewing romance. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you like this video, click that like button. If you like seeing my face talk about books, click that subscribe button. And as always and forever, may you get lost in a book.